one.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, coming to you from C19 TV. We appreciate you, as always, taking the time to spend with us as we talk movies and other entertainment. And I'm really excited about today's guest. Benita VanWinkle is guesting with us today. And I've read this little magazine, and I'll tell you why I've got Benita on here. A little magazine called AARP. And I just love the stories. And yes, I'm over the age that I can actually get AARP, so I'll share that with you as well. But I love just reading the stories and getting some interesting tidbits. And I came across this article, and it was called "The Last Picture Show." And anybody who knows me knows of my fascination and love of cinema and all types of it. And when I saw this story about this person who captures these old movie houses on camera and through photography, I was just amazed. And so I decided to reach out to Benita, and I really appreciate your response. And thank you for being a guest on our show as we're going to talk about your journey into your love of film and especially movie houses, and a forthcoming book that will be released in the spring of 25. And I think I've got the title right. America's Hometown Movie Theaters, Please Remain Standing. Is that right?
That's correct. It
Oh,
is.
wonderful. Well, Benita, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and I love to know that there's other people that are as enthusiastic about movies and movie theaters as I am. Um, that article in AARP has brought me letters. I'm so humbled. It's brought me letters from all over the United States that people have written to me to tell me about their theaters and their experiences, and it's how I find a lot of the next theaters I want to go to.
Wow. Well, growing up, I was born in a small eastern North Carolina town in Pitt County. It was called Aden, North Carolina, and we had one movie theater, and it was called the Myers Theater. And I remember going to mostly matinees, Saturday monster matinees. My mom would take me to the old Universal horror films that I would see in the Myers Theater, and it's just fascinating to me that so many of these theaters are gone, but at the same time, there are quite a few that have been saved and that have been restored and that are still being utilized in some form or fashion. So I'm excited to get you to talk a little bit about that. But before we
Sure.
do, I'd love for you to share what are some of your earliest film memories of going into these picture houses?
Um, there was, I grew up in Largo, Florida, and I remember going to see um, replaying, of course, Gone with the Wind at the Little Largo Theater, which was a quasi hut theater. It was gone by the time I was in middle school. Um, and then next door to Largo, Florida was Clearwater, and Clearwater had the big theaters. So they had the Carib and the Capitol. And the Carib, I can't say one was more favorite than the other because they were just different. They were wonderful. The Capitol had the balcony, which I always wanted to sit in the balcony. And then the Capitol was just big. But the scary part about the Capitol was it had this beautiful marquee, beautiful marquee. It was like a three-dimensional marquee with Florida and then like a sailfish and then a flamingo and a hula dancer on the Caribbean islands that were there. And it was just very cool. So it was kind of, it was fun. But then when you walked in, it was so strange because the wall was painted with these Egyptian figures that I were like 2 stories high.
Wow.
So I thought they were going to come in and get me. And I would go into the theater and I would do this until the movie started because I was so afraid of them. And then as I got older, I realized that what they was they were acting out the history of sound in movies. And
Wow.
it was just, and then I was in on it. Then I was cool. I was in on it. So, um, yeah. And that theater got me started on this whole project because then fast forward, I worked at the bank next door. I used to go get popcorn there on my breaks. Fast forward, I decided to go to college, and my teacher gave us an assignment to photograph painting with light, to paint with light, where you photograph in a
Wow.
dark place. So I took
Yes.
one light with a light bulb. I called up Clarence. I knew him, the manager. I'd worked next door. And I called up Clarence and said, "Can I come?" And he said, "Well, get here before the matinee is over with." So I said, "Okay." And so I got there with 400 feet of electrical cord and one bulb, and I got about 2 exposures off. And then the matinee was ready to start. And the one was good. And I've now seen one other photograph that was made on the inside of the theater, and it was in a magazine that was advertising that it opened. It was like
Yeah.
a theater owners magazine. But other
Right,
than
right.
that, there's not another photograph of the inside of that theater.
Wow.
So I've donated that to the historical society, in my hometown. But that theater was so special to me. And then 2 years later, after I made the photograph, it was torn down to build a parking lot for the
Wow.
bank. And
Wow.
I mean, I was so sad, but
Yeah.
that was the whole reason I started this project.
Wow. And you said you were in college. What college were you in
I
at the
went to
time?
Daytona Beach Community College because they had a professional photography degree.
Okay. So
Yeah.
photography is a love that you've had for years.
I wanted to be a photographer when I was in high school, but I
Yeah.
couldn't afford the camera. And but I was on the high school newspaper, so I thought that would be cool. And then I ended up when I was working at the bank, I was saving money for the camera. And in fact, one of the gals that I was a teller with, she and I went and she was showing cameras to me, and I bought one. And so I owned the camera, and then I left that job and then went to Daytona Beach Community College. And Clarence, who I mentioned, ran the theater. He always would play a short reel of the Star Spangled Banner before every movie.
Wow.
And he would say, he was a veteran, and he would say, "Please remain standing for our national anthem." And then he
Wow.
would start the film. But if somebody didn't stand up, Clarence would stop the film. I swear I could smell it burning. And
Wow.
he would turn on all the house lights because he
Wow.
wanted to embarrass whoever it was. And of course it did, until they stood up.
Wow. Wow. So that's where the subtitle comes from for your
Mhm.
forthcoming book.
Plus, I want the theaters to remain standing, but
Wow.
I want to, I want to acknowledge that
Yeah.
that was an
Wow.
important lesson for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. Yeah. You had mentioned, I do want you to you talked about Gone with the Wind. Were there other films that are kind of embedded in your memory, of watching those during childhood and in theaters that still stick with you today?
Okay, so Turning Point was one that was a ballet dancer. It was, Briska. Oh my gosh, I saw that. I think it was either 6 or 7 times at the Carib.
Wow.
I mean, like it gives me chills now. I loved it. The other one is I went. Well, there's two really. I went to go see Jaws. I grew up in Florida, right? I went to go see Jaws. I was in the balcony at the Capitol, and I did not remember this, but one of my best buddies that I apparently went to the movies with me, and I didn't remember that he was with me. I mean, we palled around a lot together. He said that when Jaws came out of the water, that I dumped my popcorn on the person in back of me. I believe him, but I don't remember it. Um, but I totally believe him. Um, and and then I also remember going at that same theater, going to see Midway, and it was the first time that they had the surround sound,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
remember being terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty of the theatrical experience that we found in many ways to try to duplicate at home, but you don't have it with that crowd. And that audience makes a big difference on so many films for sure.
You know, the little theater that's in Rochester, New York, I had gone to a movie there, and what was stunning to me was that after the movies, they had a lot of times they would have the director or they would have somebody that was in the movie there. And then they would have this audience participation. They still do this. They have this audience participation where everybody can ask questions and do things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new world. I was in
Yeah.
college when I saw that.
Wow.
I thought that was amazing. And so I really wanted to get back up to the Little and photograph it. And of course, during COVID, so many were closed. And I called them right afterwards because one of the people that I knew that lived in Rochester had passed away, and I was going up to a memorial service. And I called them and said, I have like this one window of time. Can I please come and photograph your theater? And they said, well, yeah, that'd be great. Come on. And I went, and they gave me so much time and so much access. And then afterwards said, well, we just redid this whole theater, and we really didn't have money to pay a photographer to come in here and shoot all the stuff that we redid. And I was like, I got this. So, um, so I gave them the pictures for that,
Wow.
which was
Wow.
really an honor for me because they had been an important part of my growth.
Right. Well, you mentioned that, and it was a college assignment, and you that was kind of that started that planted that seed. But was that also when you started thinking I really want to try to capture these beyond just my hometown, or was there a trigger, some kind of point for you that said I want to do more with this? I want to do more with this.
Well, when I was going to school, I decided I was going to be a photojournalist or a documentary photographer or some combination of. I ended up getting a job as the college photographer, actually. And I ended up doing that job for several years and then went to another college and was there a college photographer and on to another one and met so many incredible photographers. I met the first person that was ever Arthur Rothstein, who was hired for the Farm Security Administration um, and by Roy Stryker. I worked with him. I made his portrait for a cover of a magazine. I mean, I worked with Mary Ellen Mark. I mean, I worked with all kinds of really amazing photographers. So that was great. But along the way there, those photographers that I worked with, the ones that were documentary photographers were the most important to me. So I thought, here my theater had been torn down. And I thought, well, if my theater meant so much to me, I'm thinking that other theaters mean something to somebody else. And so it was very, very loose. It was very
Mm,
loose. But I
yeah.
would see a theater and I would stop and photograph. And then I'd see another theater and I'd stop and photograph it. And I started getting more and more serious about it. And then when I got through my bachelor's degree, and then I decided I was going to go to photography to school for my master's degree for photography. And when I got there, the first week they said, and what's your project? And I thought, oh, I had to have that decided before I got here. And I had been shooting different things. I had been photographing the circus, the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus for 5 years. I had been photographing other things as projects, but really the theaters were what I was enamored with. And so I said, well, yeah, I think this is my project because I've really already started it. And
Yeah.
and the funny thing is before the day before school even started and I was moving into Southern Illinois, I was in this little tiny town, Murfreesboro, and there was this Liberty Theater and the light was striking the side of it and it was beautiful at sunrise. But it was the first day of school and I had to get there. So I'd seen the theater, then I'm passing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to come back and photograph that. Well, the next day I got up early and went down there and the light was not hitting the front of the theater. It only hit the side of the theater for 1 week out of the entire year.
Wow.
So the next thing I did was at the end of that week, I went to the bookstore and I bought a daily planner for the next year. And I
Yeah.
marked 3 weeks ahead of time to start going every day so I could get the photograph when the light was hitting the front of the theater.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
was thinking about it, but not in the way of like, oh, this is going to be what I'm going to work on for 42
Yeah.
years.
Well, I love that. That's dedication. That is absolute dedication. Well, we are. Thank you all for spending time with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. And we're just so thankful to have Benita VanWinkle joining us, talking about the old picture houses, the old movie theaters. And she is documenting these and has been doing it for 42 years in some form or fashion. And the forthcoming book that she's working on that captures so many of these theaters in photographs and in stories is called America's Hometown Movie Theaters. Please remain standing. So after this intermission, we're going to bring Benita back and we're going to talk more about this book, her love of old theaters, and much more right here on Meet Me at the Movies.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hey, I'm David Allen, back as Armchair Quarterback host.
I'm Guy Suttle from C19 TV Sports.
And I'm Rob Roop from KTCBroadcasting.com.
What's in store on the gridiron? Each week we look at all 4 Cleveland County High School football teams, Burns, Crest, Kings Mountain, and Shelby. We will look at what happened the week before and look ahead at what's coming up this week.
And we'll also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb college football.
And of course, the NFL and those Carolina Panthers.
So don't miss another great season of football right here on Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV and online at c19.tv.
She gets her hair from her mom, her eyes from her dad, and her drugs from her home medicine cabinet. Fact: more people die from drug overdoses than from car crashes or gun violence. And over 50% of those deaths are from prescription drugs. Prescription drug abuse is preventable. 1. Secure and take regular inventory of our medications. 2. Dispose of unused or expired medications. 3. Share this message with others. Be aware, don't share, lock your meds.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, spending time with Benita VanWinkle, and she is a photographer and author and everything rolled into one for a forthcoming book in the spring of 2025, America's Hometown Movie Theaters, Please Remain Standing. And if you watch the first part of the show, you'll know exactly a couple of reasons why that's important. We're talking about her journey of photography and photographing these old movie houses. And Benita, when I first reached out to you, one of the things I was sharing with you is that where I live, there were 3 theaters that are these old school theaters. A couple of them are being utilized now, and one's in the process of trying to get the funding for restoration. The Rogers Theater is that one. But I mentioned to you about the Joy in Kings Mountain, and at that time we were hosting the Reel to Reel Film Festival there, and also the Don Gibson Theater. And it was so funny because you were like, yeah, I know those places. I was actually just there last week in one of those. So for those of you that are saying, you got to tell Benita about these, she knows. She knows.
Well, I'm always up for hearing about where new ones are, because I really find out about them because people tell me a lot of times. I have research methods, of course. One website is really wonderful, cinematreasures.org. I belong to the Theater Historic Society of America. There's the League of Historic American Theaters. They're all wonderful resources, but by and far, what I love hearing are the stories that people tell me. And a lot of times that's what will go in my captions, is a little bit of their stories.
So your process, when did you really start researching from the standpoint of saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to explore these. I want to find out where they are. And how far have you traveled as you tried to capture some of these theaters on film?
So I'm in graduate school, right? And I'm in Southern Illinois. Beautiful, beautiful area. But I'd never been there before. So I would get up on Saturday morning really early, and I would drive as far as I could go in any direction onto every small town I could go and just photograph them, because there was no internet. There was no way to find. I didn't know that things even existed like the Historic Society of America. I didn't know that. So I would just get in my car and drive as far as I could. If I had a friend who would go with me, then I would take them. But a lot of times I just went by myself, and I would just drive as far as I could. And then I'd turn around and drive back because I had no money to stay anywhere. And I'd always try to come back a different way so I could go through different towns. Wow. So I'm going in every direction possible and getting all the theaters that I can, and meeting people along the way and knocking on doors. And sometimes I'd knock on doors and there wouldn't be anybody there. And somebody on the street would say, "Can I help you?" And I would tell them what I was trying to do. And then they would say, "Oh, well, my brother knows the guy that has the key to the door. Let me call him and see if he's home," or
wow,
something. One theater I went to in, in Wisconsin, knocked on the door, a woman come up, "Can I help you?" I knew it was Monday. It was closed. she said, let me see if I can get a hold of him. I know he's off on Monday because a lot of them have things that go on the weekend, right? So of course they're not there on Monday. And she said, no, I can't get a hold of him. She went and tried. And then she said, well, let me try one more thing. Because I kept talking to her and she said, let me try one more thing. And she comes back and she said, he'll be here in a minute.
Wow.
And I said, well, how did you get a hold of him? Because you had tried calling him. And she goes, oh, his dad plays golf with my husband. So I just called his dad and he'll answer the phone when his dad calls. So
I love that.
I felt bad because it was his day off, but it's been wonderful. And I got amazing photographs of it, the Temple Theater.
Yeah.
It's just been, that's how I did the research at first, just going to places. And then after that, I started photographing, using the internet when the internet came along, and then using books, and I'm doing research. John Margolis did a wonderful book about theaters before. So did David Naylor. So I've read those. Then I started keeping a log of everything, of every place I was going. I am now at 1,100 theaters, and I have photographed in all 50 states.
Wow. That is amazing. Well, was that your goal once you started thinking about the book aspect? Like, okay, I want to go to all 50 states.
Mm-hmm. So I had about, I don't know, I had about 36, 38 theaters, something like that. And then one of my colleagues introduced me to my editor, at Bauer and Dean Publishing, and started talking to her. And she said, oh, this is great. We should publish a book. And I said, well, I want to get to all 50 states. And she was like, okay. She probably thought that I was going to go there, like within a year or two. Beth has been working with me for almost 10 years.
Wow.
But I kept thinking, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah.
And then something would happen and I couldn't take that trip, or I couldn't take this trip. And the only state, I will be honest, the only state that I have not set foot in is Hawaii, because it's just so expensive. And there's not that many theaters there, but my next door neighbor was going, and I was joking with her, oh, I'd love to be a mouse in your pocket. Well, 2 weeks later, this story comes out about how Harry and Meghan in California hired a photographer in Britain to photograph their pregnancy portrait. And I thought, if it's good enough for royalty, it's okay for me. So I talked my neighbor into doing this. We went out and practiced in downtown Winston-Salem, me around the corner, so she can't see me, can't hear me, but I'm telling her what to shoot. And we did it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, as you think back and reflect on this journey so far, because I know it's continuing, it's an ongoing journey, what do you think has surprised you the most about it?
Surprises me the most, I think it's just been such a gift to feel connected to so many people across the country that I don't know, and that people are so kind to me. They're just so absolutely kind to me, to let me into their theaters, to tell me their stories, to share their lives with me, to share how important their theater is to me, share all those feelings with me. I'm still so humbled by that. And I want to do right by them. I want this book to be a celebration of the theaters that are still standing and the ones that are not standing that I have photographed. I want to still celebrate that they were important in their communities. It brings people together in a way that nothing else does.
Well, as you think about these communities that are finding ways to save and restore and continue to find ways to utilize theater, sometimes in the same ways, but sometimes in new ways. What are the things that are you finding fascinating about those that are still living theaters now?
I love that many of them have, just like we all have, especially since COVID, had to reinvent how we do things, right? So I love that some theaters have added in things like sensitivity, awareness for children that have autism or people that have autism. I love that. I love that they're thinking about that. I love that they've figured out ways to pull in different parts of the community for different things, that they've engaged them in ways that are just so creative And, one place has part of the theater as like a community center. And then the other part still has the screen, or they have a screen in the back, but they use it as a community center.
Yeah.
Other places do lectures, do weddings. There's a little theater in Nebraska that just opens for almost anything. They have their high school graduations. They have poetry readings. They have, they're just being creative and figuring out ways to bring in the community, to create community, to be together.
Yeah. I love that. We are joined right here on Meet Me at the Movies with Benita VanWinkle, and we're about ready to wrap this episode, and we're going to bring Benita back in the spring when the book is released that captures so many of these stories through photographs and through interviews and thoughts. And the book is going to be called America's Hometown Movie Theaters, Please Remain Standing. And I want to give you a chance, Benita, any final thoughts or comments you want to make sure you share? Because we are going to have you back, but anything you want to make sure you share today?
I just want to say that I've been doing this, for 42 years. This last week, my husband and I shared our 35th wedding anniversary. I met him on the first day of graduate school when I was doing this. He's been my chauffeur. He has been my assistant. He's not been my assistant sometimes. He was supposed to look out for me one time, and then this policeman, I was laying out in the middle of the street, literally laying in the street. And my husband was on the side just laughing as this policeman walked up to and said, can I help you? Oh, you're taking pictures. And my husband's over there just cracking up laughing. But, I just appreciate all the people that have helped, but I especially appreciate having somebody who's really been there to help me so much.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Yeah, when we have those in our lives who understand us, who know us, who love us, and who are willing to let us get run over by cars for them just so they can get a laugh, it's worth it. It's worth it. I've got one of those in my life as well. Benita, thanks so much for being with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. If anybody wanted to, or do you post any of your photos, or if people want to just kind of see a preview of what you've got going on, is there a way to do that?
I have some of them on my Facebook page, which is just, my name. And I have some on Instagram as well. And I have a website, which I need to work on. So thank you for reminding me of that. Busy Bee Studio, BUSYB studio.com. And I'm going to be adding more and more stuff to that. We've been sort of cautious about adding a lot of things to it because we were working on the book, but now I'm ready to start doing them.
Wonderful. Benita VanWinkle joining us right here on Meet Me at the Movies, talking about the picture houses and the joy of being able to see some of those still standing. And the book will be coming out in spring of 25, capturing pictures. And you said you have 1,100 pictures. They probably won't all make this this book, but you're going to have maybe enough for 17 volumes or more. Of America's Hometown Movie Theaters, Please Remain Standing, Volume 1 for this one.
Yeah.
Benita, thanks so much for being with us, and for all of those who spend time with us on Meet Me at the Movies, we appreciate you as well. And until next time, for the entire cast and crew right here, that's a wrap.
Again.